news. Now, returning to our top story, that, of course, is the state visit of President Macron to the UK. The top of Sir Keir Starmer's wish list is to cement his one-in, one-out deal with France to help curb spiralling illegal immigration. But with 6 other EU member states already crying no, is the deal already dead in the water? Well, let's speak now with the Eurosceptic activist Charles Henri Gallois, the man they call Monsieur Frexit, great friend of yours. Charles Henri, superb to see you. I wanted to ask you what the French public's reaction is to this visit, and more to the point, how popular or not is Emmanuel Macron right now with the French public?
I mean, you just check the polls and you know that Macron is not very popular in France, isn't it? So I think it's not that, let's say, broadcast in France because Macron has no more credibility, I mean, at home. So his own choices and his own way now is to do travel the world and to do international politics because the French people cannot stand in anymore. So as you can see in all the files in Iran, Ukraine, he tried to do everything he can to exist, but most of the time he's more doing the comments of the decision Donald Trump has taken. So I don't know what you should expect from the visit because he has not the power anymore in France. And if you talk about, let's say, immigration, which is the main issue we may have between the UK and France, Macron is pro-immigration. I mean, in France, since he has taken office, the numbers have increased by 100,000 people per year. So now it's only 500,000 people coming to France each year, which is huge, and which is numbers that have never been achieved. And I mean, on that way, and the fact that Macron is not willing to meet Nigel Farage, maybe it's a good thing for Nigel because he wants, let's say, he won't waste time with him. I mean, it's a lack of vision because all the polls show that Nigel may be the next prime minister in the UK. And even if Macron, thanks God, won't be here in 2029, if you have some vision and you want to think and to talk about the future, it will have been a good thing to meet Nigel and to talk indeed about immigration. But you see that Macron is just here to take some lights, but not to solve issues.
And Charles Henri, the latest polling I've seen shows that only 3% of the French electorate are very satisfied with Emmanuel Macron, 18% quite satisfied, so 21% of the voters in France are in any way satisfied with Macron, as opposed to 44% very dissatisfied, 35% quite dissatisfied. Can I ask you, in as far as the prospect of doing a deal with Britain, this one-in, one-out deal, do you think Emmanuel Macron has any interest in stopping immigration into Britain? If immigration into France is such a problem for him, why should he care about stopping illegal immigrants coming to our shores?
I mean, I don't think that he will do it, and he is pro-immigration in France, so I don't know why he would be against immigration for the UK. And mainly, even if he has, let's say, a God thing that can change his mind. Let's say that now he has no the power anymore. He has no majority in the parliament. So even if he has a deal, it's not necessarily a deal that will be applied by the parliament. So that's why he has no power at home, no credibility. And the 2 years coming to the next presidential election will be quite long for French people, but as well quite long for him, I think.
OK, thank you very, very much for joining us. Always a pleasure to have your company. Charles Henri Gallois, superb voice from the other side of the channel. Back to the studio now, and I'm still joined by the constitutional expert, the author, the biographer, the historian, Alexander Lorman. Alexander, In defence of Emmanuel Macron, you do believe he's an Anglophile, he loves the United Kingdom.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with any of that. And I know that he's absolutely hated in his own country. And I mean, with my GCSE in French, I can't really say much about it. But what I can say is that if you look at Macron, he has this great and sincere interest in Britain. I mean, you can see this bromance that exists between him and the king. And that's not been put on for the cameras. I mean, the two men really do connect with one another. And it's interesting that when Charles was hosted at Versailles in September 2023, Macron deliberately served the Paul Roger Cuvée Winston Churchill because he wanted to make an impression, but he also wanted to nod to Churchill. And of course, you can see this Anglophilia and indeed love of the royal family is quite sincere, because when the late Queen died, I thought Macron really captured the spirit of many people not in this country, because what he said is, to you, she was your queen, to us, she was the queen. And I thought, yeah, nailed it. So, yeah, I mean, I agree he's probably an absolutely useless president in France. And I think that for the poor French people, the end probably can't come quickly enough. But on the world stage, I think he's a much more compelling and much more charismatic figure than many of his predecessors have been. So.
And, of course, worth remembering, of course, King Charles, fluent in French, and he's Francophile himself. He genuinely does care about France.
Well, that's the thing, because I think it's often seen as there's a stronger link between the British royal family and Germany, because obviously for a very long time, members of the British royal family spoke German. They had the common ancestry with the Germans. But with Charles, it's clear that it's not Germany he looks to, it's France, because I think he's a man of culture and sophistication. He's also an adulterer, so those things have obviously gone together. So.
OK, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much, Alexander Lorman. Let me ask you a blunt question. What's the point of royal state visits? What is Britain hoping to get out of this? And more to the point, what is Emmanuel Macron
well,
to get out of it?
Martin, as ever, there's the text and there's the subtext. The text is that this is going to be a meeting that's going to be bringing about the entente cordiale. It's going to be bringing about stronger links between Britain and France. The subtext is that, as you say, this is the most political state visit imaginable, because we have the king, who is clearly a Francophile. He's clearly somebody who has a bromance going on with Macron. I mean, if you saw, there was the backslapping and the arm touching and things like that. There's clearly a very good relationship between the two men. But always talk about there being no borders between France and Britain, that the king's going to say in his speech tonight. It's very loaded language, isn't it? Because as we all know, if you've got all these people coming over on the small boats day in, day out, no borders is a very specific use of language, because obviously bear in mind that any speech that the king delivers, and especially in such a high-profile occasion as this, that speech is not something that's just off-the-cuff improvisation. That will have been worked over, that will have had people go over it for days, weeks, possibly even months, because this has been a highly anticipated state visit. So what we can see, essentially, as with the king's meeting with Zelensky, as with everything he's done up to now, is he is the most political of monarchs. And this state visit, possibly even more so than the Donald Trump state visit later in the year, has the king's personal signature upon it. I mean, the clips we were just seeing about Macron being shown the memorabilia, the Marie Antoinette material, that would have been the king saying, let's do this and let's do that. That's not coming from Starmer, a man of no historical interest whatsoever. This is his own decision, because he knows Macron, he's met him dozens of times, he's known him since he was Prince of Wales. The two men have this rapport together. So we can see today that this is essentially one for him, just as the Donald Trump state visit is one for them. But the question that you have to ask is, what does the king want to get out of it himself? Because he's been hoping that Macron shares his environmental views, and he's hoping that there's going to be some kind of movement on things like climate change and that crisis. But it's really interesting, because what we all know about His Majesty is that he is the possessor of an enormous amount of soft power, possibly more so than anyone else in the country, that he has no constitutional power, but he's able to go around and say, well, I don't like this, I don't like that. And he's listened to, because he's the king. And so today, we're really going to see the limits of how far he can stretch that, just how far his hosting of Macron, his being front and centre all day. Because a lot of people, I mean, if you knew nothing about the country and you turned into for television right now, you'd think that the king was like the president in America, with Starmer as this diminished and rather small figure, and maybe there's something in that.
Do you think, Alexander, I'm being a tad harsh when I'm saying perhaps it's not the best thing for the king to say by having such words as there will be no borders between Britain and France? So he might mean that in a way that resonates well with his social circle, with the intelligentsia, with the Church of England, with the wokerati, call them what you want. But there has been a substantial backlash today from the great British public. And I wonder if comments like this, they may be meant in passing, they may be well meant, but they've landed pretty badly.
But it's a very deliberate use of language. I mean, no borders, that is talking about the open EU, that is talking about this utopia where people could be going from one country to another in the Schengen way. And of course, as we know, this has led to absolute chaos when it comes to immigration. This has led to absolute chaos when it comes to freedom of movement. And so for the king to be saying, let's have no borders between us and France, I mean, well, I was wondering as well, Your Majesty, you've got some spare rooms in Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle. Do you fancy taking in a few illegal immigrants and seeing how all that goes? Great
stuff, Alexander Lorman. A spicy start to the show and so much more to go through in the next few hours. Of course, that historic visit to Westminster Abbey, addressing Parliament, the wreath laying at the statue of Sir Winston Churchill and out of that of the statue of General Charles